It's a 2-player deck building TCG with an average playtime of around 25 to 45 minutes. You get cards from opening booster packs, trading with your friends, etc. And following the rules, you then use these cards to craft a deck. There's lots of freedoms when building a deck too. You're not just limited by having to use a certain type, for example. You can, that is an option, but I'll talk more about that later. As for what you're trying to do, your goal is to defeat 5 of your opponent's characters. And I know that's not very original, every deck builder seems to have defeating to win, at least I think, I don't know, I've only played the Pokemon TCG, but still, that's just the end goal, it's how you get there that's fun. There are different mechanics that set it apart from other card games, which we'll get into right now. There are lots of them, but not in a confusing bad way. You have your basic ones like draw a card each turn, play cards, attack, but those are boring. This section is for describing the fun and unique ones. First off, there's always something you can do. Out of cards to play? You can draw a card for 1 action point. Don't like the character in your front lines? Swap them. Losing? Now you can play cards you couldn't before. Even if you start your turn with nothing, no action points, or even negative action points for that matter, you can skip your card draw and now you have 1 action point to use on the house. And that's without using cards. Now for the fun effects that cards can do. One unique one in this game is disorienting. This is when you rotate a character 90 degrees, which stops them from giving action points, attacking, and using abilities. Honestly, the use case and strategies regarding this mechanic is so vast, I could probably make a video on this one mechanic alone. So for right now, that's all I'm giving you. Other cards can force swaps on you and your opponent, some cards have abilities that heal or boost damage, and some of those abilities can even have their effect influenced by certain factors. One card can bring characters back from the dead, one can use the attack of any character in play, and another card can sweep your opponent's entire team and has the capacity to one-shot anything. Don't worry, it's not that OP. I mean, he can sweep, but the card isn't game-breaking and he has things that balance him out. Definitely still fun to use though. And before I move on to the packs themselves, I need to mention that this game has very limited luck-based mechanics. There are no coin flips. I've heard horror stories of TCG Pocket and I am glad I steered clear of that. The only real luck involved is with drawing cards, and even then, there are quite a few cards you can use to get what you need. Right now, as of this video, there is only one type of booster pack available for purchase. That is Set 1 The Valley. You get 18 cards per pack, 10 commons, 5 uncommons, 2 uncommon or rare, and 1 rare or super rare. Each seed does not contain duplicates, a seed being a certain category, like how I mentioned uncommon or rare. Those uncommons are in a different seed than the uncommon seed, so you could get a duplicate that way. It's kind of complicated, I don't really like it either, but that's just how the website does it. Same with rarities, I can't just say 5% gives super rare, it's not that simple. I wish it was, but it's not. This game is a bit more involved compared to other games. It does require paying attention, knowing what your opponent's cards do, and how you can properly use what you're given in any scenario. You have to be aware of certain weaknesses or resistances, certain passives and abilities, what you can and can't or shouldn't do. But with that being said, that also means that you have a lot of control over what happens and you can influence the state of the game in just one turn. Like I mentioned before, it is a very strategy-based game. There's not much luck involved other than drawing cards. So if you're interested in a game with a higher skill ceiling, this might be the game for you. And that's not to say it's a hard game either. My friend almost beat me using a starting deck on his first try. Skill doesn't equal hard. Almost anyone can play should they understand the rules, but if they can use those rules to their advantage, that's when the skill comes into play. I don't want to be pretentious and compare it to chess, but I'll use it as an example. Anyone can play chess, so long as you know what the pieces do, but truly mastering it takes a bit of practice. The freedom in this game is great. You can build a whole bunch of decks with different themes in mind. You could use the same types of cards like other TCGs, which does have some benefit. However, this is definitely one of the weaker and harder synergies to get to work, since types rarely matter and the energy you get is not type dependent. But that's not to say it won't work, just know it's not as easy as more type equals win. Another deck you could build is location based. This one is definitely a bit more reliable than types, as there are location based boost cards. But this theme is also pretty broad. Action point decks. Now we're getting more specific. These are decks that prioritize getting the most action points. Obviously you need action points regardless of the deck you're using, but this one specializes in cards and boosts that go over your 5 action points, allowing for stronger cards and attacks. Tempo decks. This deck utilizes cards that impact your opponent's action point gain as well as your own. You can manage your opponent's hand or who they have in the front lines. Pivot decks. Kind of the counter to the deck previously mentioned. This deck allows you to be super in control of your cards, being able to swap for a low cost or free, retreat cards into your hand, have anchors to limit your opponent's ability to force a swap, etc. Stall. Ew. Rotating decks. These are decks that focus on disorienting or knocking out your opponent's cards. This is kind of a subset to tempo decks. Gimmick decks. My personal favorite. Not so much a deck as it is using random wacky cards. I got Mosquito to 20 health in one game. My opponent couldn't really do anything, it was great. Sweep decks. You can defeat your opponent using only one card, but for entire decks, there's really only one of these, at least to my knowledge, and that's running Universe Lobster. Either way, still a super fun deck to use. I could list more, and more examples of cards to use in each deck, but this video has to end eventually, so maybe I'll get to making videos going over certain decks if you all want to see it. Let me know in the comments. If you would like to buy a booster pack or starter deck, a link will be listed on my homepage or the description. I have no control over shipping or manufacturing, which is less stress for me, but it also means the product will take longer to get to you and might make it more expensive. In the future, I do hope to be able to sell it physically in stores to bypass this, but as of right now, that's not the case. It is $7.99 per pack of 18 cards, excluding shipping, which I think is pretty fair, considering something like Pokemon is 20 cards for $10. Even if you don't think the game is for you, feel free to collect the cards for the art. Every card was made by me and are mostly marker drawn with some digital touch-ups. You should see the folders I have. There is one that is technically fully digital, and that's the card Shutdown, but that's just because circles are hard. So yeah, that's my game. Hopefully you give it a try. Share, like, subscribe, comment, check out the website, check out my other videos, do your homework, wash the dishes, and have a cookie.